Hello, y'all. Welcome to the Outsmart Overeating podcast. I have a special guest in the house today. Client Melanie has agreed to come on and share her experience in the Unstuffed and most recently Masterfull program. Melanie, thank you so much for joining Coach Steph and I on the podcast today. Why don't you go ahead and just take a moment and share a little bit about yourself, dieting background, and just create some context for our listeners.
Hey, thanks, Leslie, and thanks, Steph, for inviting me today. I'm excited to talk with you both and share my journey for you and all your listeners. So, a little about me. I am 47 years old, and for the last 30 years, I have dieted. And I think I've tried every diet there is out there and had great successes with almost all of them for the short term. I would lose 30 pounds and then I would gain 40 pounds. Then I would lose 30 pounds and gain 40 pounds. So I was slowly just inching my way up. And I've actually known Steph for a few years and had always followed her podcasts. And I heard about this Unstuffed program and way of life. And so for about a year, I just listened to the podcasts and thought, oh, this is easy. I can do this on my own. And I know Steph has had successes, and she and I have a bit of a similar background in our dieting history. So I'm like, oh, if Steph can do it, I'll just follow what she says and I can do it. And so I listened and listened, and nothing changed. My mindset changed a little bit, but like it sounds like a good theory, and it obviously works, but it was difficult to put into practice on my own. So I explored the Unstuffed program and considered it for quite a while. And then I just took the leap, and it was a big investment, but I really feel that if there's something that you need to get done in your life, you have to really invest in it. And just listening for free and getting tidbits here and there wasn't enough for me. I had to really deep dive into the program, pay for it, and really put my money where my mouth is, and just really dive into the program. And it's been great. It's been life-changing.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to tease apart a little bit about your history. If you struggled with binge eating, emotional eating, of course, Steph has shared lots of tidbits about her dieting background in the past. You two have a similar background, it seems. And so it's not uncommon for our listeners to listen for 6 months to a year before actually pulling the trigger on joining. And the psychology of investing, I always say that the transaction happens before the transformation. We have to get some skin in the game.
Mhm.
When we spend money on something, we take it a hell of a lot more seriously because it's painful not to and not act on it. So if we invest in hiring a personal trainer, for example, and we have commitment to show up at the gym and meet them, and then we cancel last minute, that's a pain point because now we're wasting money. And similarly, money, putting our money where our mouth is, sends a message to our higher self that we are making a commitment, that we are taking this seriously, that this is important. So look, anything in your life that you want to make a change in, chances are, whether it's getting a career or lessons on how to play a guitar or learn a different language, you're probably going to have to spend some money figuring it out. So I appreciate you sharing the hesitation or trying to wing it on your own. I think that's very common for people. But it's quite different to actually be immersed in the community, have all of the information, and then a mentor literally holding your hand and guiding you through it instead of you just trying to take these little general tidbits that we share and apply it to your life. And sure, some people are able to do that and make pretty good progress, but it's not a replacement for like the real deal. So I just want to understand a little bit more, Melanie, about was there a specific thing that happened, a trigger for why you decided to join the program? Something that we often hear is, I stepped on the scale and I needed to do something, or I saw a photo of myself and like I had to get, take some action immediately. Things of that nature usually push people into taking action. Did you have anything like that occur? Or was it just like you're frustrated long enough and I need to do something and the doors are opening? Because we only open them twice a year for 4 days at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was more of a prolonged frustration. So I had recently gone through a divorce, and so had a lot of life changes, changed my career as well, and it was a lot of stress, and I actually dropped weight really quickly. And kind of, I call it the divorce diet. Just wasn't eating properly and very stressed. So I was feeling great, like, oh wow, I've lost all this weight. Oh, I'm just gonna keep it off now. Well, then life got more comfortable and I went back to my old ways. And a little bit about my old ways was that I was an emotional eater and I tended to overeat. I travel a lot for my job and I explore a lot of new places within the US and internationally. And I food is one of the things that comes along and I just wanted to try it all. And so once life got a little bit back to normal state after the divorce, I saw my weight slowly creeping back up and I just really couldn't figure it out. I'm like, I know I'm doing all the right things. I know I'm working out. Working out has always been easy for me. I love to work out. So I was working out just as much as previously, but for some reason my weight kept inching back up and now I know why, but at that point I didn't know why. And so I was considering I'm going to go on another crash diet that I'm going keto worked for me and all these things work for me. I'm just going to go back on this, but um, just looking back and listening to your podcast was really what spurred me because it was just over and over like, sure, we can do these crash diets, lose weight, but is it sustainable? Will it last? And obviously with my 30 years of dieting history, it was not sustainable. So I was just looking for an answer of something that could I could solve it once and for all, that this is a lifestyle. It's something I can do. One of the key things that I loved hearing about your program was that you can eat whatever you want. And like I've always been a restrictor.
Mhm.
And I love to follow a program that was like, eat this amount at this time of day, and this is all you get. And it worked well for me, but it was super frustrating because then if I came across a bag of Doritos, I would just scarf it all down. So I was very restrictive in my eating and never allowed myself to have those foods that I really craved. So that was probably the key thing was hearing you can have this lifestyle where you can eat whatever and maintain your weight loss. So that was
Yeah.
the key trigger and I couldn't do it on my own, so I needed help.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Also, if you are a restrictor, and just contextually for anyone who's listening, this is kind of what we've identified as the two primary types of dieters, the two different diet personality types, a permitter and a restrictor. Sounds like you identified more as a restrictor, Melanie. And these individuals tend to be pretty extreme in their approach. They have a really hard time saying yes to Doritos or breaking any of their food rules and really beat themselves up when they do. So the rules are in place because they make us feel comfortable and cozy. And we just have to just tell me what to do, right? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. That way we don't have to think for ourselves. So one thing that I am curious about is you said that you were an emotional eater. A lot of our clients do not identify themselves as an emotional eater until they are in the program and they're like, oh shit, I guess I am an emotional eater. Was that also your experience, or were you able to kind of tease apart by listening to the podcast before joining that you have instances of emotional eating?
No, I didn't know it until I was in the program. I and it really came to light when uh I started journaling and tracking all every not my food intake, but just like journaling about how
Right.
my day was, how I felt, and that sort of thing. And there was a lot of urges throughout the day where I wanted to eat, I wanted to snack, but I wasn't hungry. But it was because I was procrastinating. I had a big project I needed to do and I didn't want to do it, so I would eat, or I was stressed about something and I would go to the pantry and look for something to eat. So I didn't know that that was an issue at all for me until I got into the program and realized, wow, there's a lot of excess calories I'm taking in throughout the day that I'm totally mindlessly eating that.
Yeah. Well, Steph, I know you worked really closely with Melanie. I'd love to get some of your perspective on some of the things that you were able to kind of help coach Melanie through and just share more of her story with us so we can, from a coach's perspective.
What I really love hearing is I didn't really know these were a problem for me until I was in the program because, first of all, same. I did not know I was an emotional eater until I started looking at that because everybody has this, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but so many of us have this vision of emotional eaters as like crying in their ice cream over a breakup or something like that, as if that is the only emotion that humans experience. And that wasn't me, but I was definitely a procrastinator and I didn't realize it. And of course, fellow restrictor over here, I could go and go and go and go and go and follow the rules to a T. But as soon as the wheels fell off, man, they were off. So I know that you and I share a lot of that. And when you talk about doing things like keto and you do things like extreme diets, those are just to get you out of pain. I am just sick of looking the way I look, feeling the way I feel about myself. I just need to get out of pain. But knowing who you are a traveler. You are someone, everybody kind of says, I love food so much. No, you love food. I know you love food because you don't just love hanging out in your own refrigerator. You go so many different places and experience cultures and cuisines and things that just are so expansive. And so putting someone like you on a keto diet is the most it's like cut off my feet, why don't you? It would be the worst thing we could possibly do for someone like you. And so when you marry the restrictor, give me all the rules type of personality with here's this other side of me that just travels and finds beauty in everything around me, those two things don't go together very well. When we start putting hard and fast rules, it's kind of hard to be a restrictor in that moment because now you're depriving yourself of experiences. And that is never what anybody wants. And that's definitely not what we want for our clients and our members. So I'm really happy that you just kind of like, you know what? Steph gets me. Like she's been through some shit. I've been through some shit. I'm gonna see what she's up to because the reality is I felt like nothing was gonna work for me either unless I had all the rules. And man, isn't it great to prove yourself wrong? It's the
Yes.
best feeling in the world to prove that wrong. So how do you feel now that because a lot of restrictors are terrified of that. Like I get to eat all the foods. There's a part of me that really feels encouraged and excited by that, but then there's a part of me that's like, yeah, right. I need
Mhm.
all the rules. How do you feel now?
Yeah, so now after what has it been about 8, 9 months, I'm very comfortable with it and it's not a problem. But I have to take you back to the very beginning when I did start to reintroduce those foods into my diet, and putting Doritos on my plate at lunch was like, oh my gosh, can I eat just 5 of these or am I going to eat the whole bag? It was a real fear, and I didn't want to add them back in, but uh, it was doable. It took a few months to really to get there, but I loved that we were adding in those foods and getting to a place where we didn't fear them. And I sometimes I put those sorts of food on my plate, but really I don't care anymore. And is I have Doritos in my house right now, and before I couldn't have. It would have been gone in a few days, but now they're in the cupboard, they're not even open, and I don't care. And I see them every day and it doesn't bother me. So really overcame that. And As far as travel, my biggest issue with travel before was a lot of my travel was for my work. And so my work's paying for it. So it's like free food. I can eat as much as I want. I just submit an expense form. I can have a 5-course meal every night and just take it all in. And it was like, oh, I have to get it all in. I don't know if I'll ever be back here again. So once I started this program and realized like food's not going anywhere, there's a lot of it, and I don't have to eat all of it. And I still experience all the different foods. I just don't eat as much. I'll just have little bits and pieces of everything. And we do a lot of shared plates if I'm with a group and just try little things. And that's been really gratifying is that I'm not neglecting myself. I'm not uh, stopping myself from experiencing things and just eating less of those same great foods.
Yeah. As someone who has spent her entire life dieting, you grow up with this very interesting relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
You become obsessed with it and preoccupied by it and interested in it, but yet afraid of it. And it's kind of the enemy, but also the thing that's like, hey, babe, come here, girl. Like, let's do some stuff. So it's so freeing from my perspective to have high quality experiences with food instead of this very fearful, tumultuous relationship with it, where when you're off the whatever diet you're on, it's like a quantity relationship with food, a scarcity relationship with food. Like you said, I got to get it all in. I don't know if I'll be back here, and like somebody else is paying for it and it's free, as if that somehow expands your stomach and your energy needs and your capacity. But
Right.
it makes logical sense to our brain, even though it's just not actually logical, because the body's like, hey, we're pretty full and miserable here. But the brain's just like, yeah, but you'll never be full and miserable here again. Maybe like the next country, but never here again.
Right.
So, do you feel like your experience with food now are more relaxed and higher quality because they aren't scarce in the same, I guess, falsely scarce in the same way?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. I used to just think about it all the time and like planning when is my next meal, look at menus ahead of time online. Like, what am I going to order? I got to get the salad. And now I'm just like, whatever, we'll eat whenever we eat. I'll be fine. And there's been a lot of times I'll go on overseas flights that are really long and you get hungry sitting on the plane, but then you see the food that they're bringing to you on the plane and like not even, no, don't need that. And that was another thing I need to bring up is I was scared of being hungry. Like if you get that hunger pang and like, oh, I need to have granola bars with me, protein bars, whatever, always something on hand. I don't have that anymore at all. The other day I was driving home. It was about an hour drive home, and it was lunchtime, and I was hungry, and I didn't have any food on me, and like scavenging my car, like, do I have a granola bar somewhere? And like, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'll be home in a half an hour and I can have lunch. It's okay to feel hungry. So that was another big hurdle for me was getting over that fear of hunger and where am I going to get my next meal? Like, there's a lot of food out there.
Yeah, where are you going to get your next meal?
Right? Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I'm so glad that you've made that piece. I think fearing hunger is so relatable for a dieter. It's just,
Mhm.
I mean, it's socially built in. Don't get hangry. And if you're hungry, then here are all the reasons why it's a problem. And now we have these huge portions and we sell it as a solution
Mhm.
instead of just being able to recognize that this is a biological norm. In fact, it's a healthy one. It's a way our body communicates with us, and it's just literally not a problem. Like nobody is walking around selling diapers for everyone just in case you have to pee on a car ride. It's like you need to make sure you bring this extra capacity diaper. No, we can stop. We
Right.
can just stop. It's fine.
Yeah.
This podcast is taking a weird turn. We start bringing adult diapers into the conversation.
Hey, you never know what you're going to get.
To go from one location to the next 30-minute drive. But it's true. We have obviously been socially conditioned to fear our own bodies, which is really weird. But how are the food marketers going to make their money? How is the diet industry going to make their money if they don't have snacks to sell us all the time, or to convince us that hunger, a natural physical cue, is a problem? And the problem with fearing hunger, obviously, as we have all come to realize, is it keeps us in a perpetual state of overeating. We're always preventing hunger from occurring. So rest assured, the more we're eating throughout the day, the more likely we are to consume excess calories. So what do you think was the game changer for you in learning to get comfortable with hunger, to embrace it, to see it as I guess, an asset instead of something to fear?
Yeah, probably the game changer for me was just actually starting to see results and actually previously with other diets I've been on, it was, I knew if I was getting to that hunger state that the pounds were going to go down. And um so that was always okay for me to get to that state. So with this program, probably recognizing my hunger cues and doing all of that was not too difficult for me to overcome. I was able to see that I don't need to eat 6 meals a day. I can survive on 3, and I don't need snacking in between, and it's okay. It probably took me a couple weeks of going through that process and really tracking how long am I hungry, and then I need to eat, and doing all of that. And that was very helpful to see that I'm not going to waste away to nothing. I'm not going to pass out, and I can still sustain my energy if I wait half hour, an hour to eat. So that part just took a couple weeks to get there. The part that was hardest for me was realizing when I was full.
Yeah.
So I really struggled with that and stopping at a certain point.
Very relatable and common, I would say. I do think that restrictors in particular are much more comfortable with hunger. They're used to being hungry.
Mhm.
In fact, they're more likely to turn this into the hunger fullness diet than a permitter type of client, because they're like, oh, if some hunger is good, the more must be better. So they're the ones that we kind of have to reel back and say, look, we're not playing the Hunger Games here. There is a boundary between self-respect and kindness and honoring your body versus like being a dick and pushing things to the extreme, which is very on brand for a restrictor to be an extremist in the way that they approach this process and their dieting history. So I appreciate that insight. I do agree, Melanie, that a lot of our clients, the vast majority, need more time to focus on fullness more than hunger. People tend to embrace hunger pretty well once they get over the initial fear. And there's a lot of reassurance because there's a clear signal with hunger that isn't always so obvious with our clients in fullness at the beginning. So I know you decided to continue into the Masterfull program after you graduated from Unstuffed. So you spent 26 weeks with us in Unstuffed, and then you spent another 12 plus ish in that range in Masterfull. And so I'd love to get some of your perspective on why you decided to continue with Masterfull, because you were doing pretty well towards the end of Unstuffed. Things were kind of rocking and rolling, and you had some good, I guess, momentum going. So what was kind of the deciding factor there for you?
Yeah, I actually wavered a lot. And I felt at first, I thought, okay, I'm ready. I know the steps, I know what I need to do. The habits are in place. I can do this. But then I got in my head and started freaking out like, oh no, can I do this on my own? And then hearing more about what was included in the Masterfull program of going deeper, going beyond the food issues and really getting into the emotional and mental areas. And I thought, you know what, I'm already here. I might as well just do another few months and really let this stick. And I'm so glad I did. It was a huge game changer for me. And actually, looking back, I think if I would have stopped at the end of Unstuffed, I probably would have maintained, because I know the habits, know all of that. But one of the things with Masterfull was just really looking at all the little things that you're doing. A big one for me was wine, and I had all the food down, and I was doing well with that. But I'm like, why am I not still losing? And realizing that the wine in my life was a lot of excess calories, and just like the continuing group support that we had. And with this program, one of the things I was fearful of when I went into it was I do travel a lot. I work several jobs, and am I going to be able to make these group training calls? Uh, and I really haven't made many of them, but they are all recorded. And actually just listening to them every day when I go on my walk, I'm listening to the Unstuffed or Masterfull calls, or the your other podcast. I hear you ladies every single day in my head. and and it's really, really helped me. And just hearing other people's stories, and a lot of things I've learned from listening to those calls was like, I didn't even realize that was an issue for me, but I have the same issue where, yeah, I've done great with my food today, so I'm going to have an extra cup of coffee. Well, there goes all of the progress I just made. So it's like hearing those things from other people that they're struggling with. Like, that's the exact same thing I'm struggling with, but I didn't even know it. So that was a huge advantage to me, was listening to those group calls, even though I wasn't able to participate at the time always, but even listening to the recordings was huge for me. And the Masterfull has just been, it just goes to that next level. And it's not all about the food, it's about your emotions, your feelings, and how to deal with other people, and that you can't control their feelings, and just all of those things, that it's way beyond the food. But it all kind of goes back to the food, because being an emotional eater, like if I'm taking on other people's emotions, then I just want to go eat to make me feel better for them. It's a little nutty. So yeah, it's just recognizing all of those things.
Right, connecting those dots. I mean, I appreciate clients who continue in a Masterfull for those reasons, but I also think that this is such a niche topic and community. Like, where else are you really going to be able to go to get this kind of degree of support and tweaking and refinement? Nowhere. Nowhere. I don't know another program like this. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I just don't know about it if it does. So that's what I think makes it super useful, is because when you're done with Unstuffed, you're done. The program goes away, the coaching goes away, the habit tracking, unless you do it on your own, like the accountability, it's just you. And I think it can be kind of abrupt for clients because they had all this support, all this community, and then and they're still like in a good place, but I feel like those extra 3 to 6 months just really solidify things. They really kind of firm what might be kind of, again, kind of those niche tweaks and revisions, and just going deeper into those bites, licks, and tastes that are happening. And it sounds like in your case, which is extremely relatable, the wine conversation. So, Steph, I'd love to get your perspective, because I know that you likely helped Melanie. And just for clarity, it might be helpful to also share a little bit what it looks like to be a client who isn't able to attend all of the coaching calls, because you are still able to get great coaching, make excellent progress without having to be present for all those calls. So, Steph, maybe you can kind of touch on those two things, the wine and how we coach people behind the scenes when they're not able to get the participation on the calls that they want to or feel like they would have to really benefit from the program.
One thing that I will say is that when it comes to our programs, oftentimes what we tend to offer for our fast action takers is a little bit more of a high touch experience. And we offer them opportunities to get on the phone with either you, Leslie, or myself and get some one-on-one coaching periodically, depending on where you're at in the program and what your needs are. And so I got to the opportunity to have some one-on-one conversations with Melanie. And what is so fun about that is starting the conversations off with coaching, and then ending her experience where she is now with like, I really don't have anything to say. I don't really have any problems to solve. I'm honestly like, I just got to keep doing what I'm doing. But I wanted to just catch you up and give you an update about how great things are going. And so that evolution through Unstuffed and then into Masterfull. And yeah, we got to catch up sometimes on the group calls, but very rarely. But what I did know about Melanie is that she was always doing the work. And if she ever kind of fell off of the tracking or journaling or whatever, it's like, you know what, I really want to do a little bit better job with the journaling. I really want to do a little bit better job at digging into some of these things. And so she would do those things. And that is what afforded her the opportunity or the ability to see where her roadblocks were quickly, right? Anybody who resists the tracking and the journaling, I get it. But that's the hard way, y'all. That just takes a little longer. Like you're just going to take a little longer to figure out things that you could be solving in 5 minutes a day. So Melanie, I'd love to kind of hear what you discovered as we kind of had those conversations about the wine and how it was showing up and why it was showing up. Because from what I took away, a lot of the things that you were thinking about the food or the wine or the overeats were really just kind of old thoughts in your head. And when you said them out loud or you started to work through them, you realize, hey, this is actually not even true. This is just the way my brain is thinking I need to be. But then you're like, I could do it this way, or I could do it this way. And as you got more curious, all of a sudden the overeat started reducing. All of a sudden, the wine habit was much more an intentional choice of when you were drinking than just an automation that you were doing just because of the environment that you were in, the relationships that you have, those kinds of things. So I would love for you to just kind of give us a little bit of maybe a before and after of here's my before wine mindset and here's my current wine mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So my wine drinking started about a couple of years ago. So I got into a new relationship and we enjoyed drinking wine together. So that was something that we could do together and have that conversation about, oh, this tastes so good and let's go to this winery and let's do this and this and this. So that's actually when I started to see my weight start creeping back up. Now that I look back, I can see the correlation there. So it was an everyday of having a glass of wine with dinner, which it wasn't a problem per se, but it was just extra calories. And so once I realized that the reason I was drinking wine was just out of habit. Like you're getting dinner ready, you're drinking a glass of wine, and it's just what you do. And it was getting expensive too. Like popping that bottle of wine every day. But really digging into because I had this point where I know I'm eating right, but there's something that's holding me back from losing the weight. And so that was the one thing I identified. And the reason I wanted to drink it was, well, it tasted good, but it was more so I could have that camaraderie with my boyfriend. And so stepping back and looking at that in the big picture of like, there's other ways we can connect. We can just have a chat about our day. We don't have to be drinking wine at the same time. So I made a new decision with myself that wine is reserved for special occasions. So if we go to a winery, which is very rare, it might be once every 3 months, that of course I'm going to taste the wine, but it doesn't have to be every night with dinner. And maybe if we go out for a special meal, then we'll have a glass of wine. So really moved from having a glass of wine every day to maybe a glass of wine once every 2 weeks. And it actually made it a little bit more special. Like, oh, I'm looking forward to it. I really want to enjoy this and pick the best bottle of wine instead of just take that $5 bottle of wine and, and drink it every day. So, and it hasn't caused any issues in my relationship. My boyfriend stopped drinking too. We drink together on those special occasions now. So it's been good for both of us.
always love when relationships are improved through the bonding of the habits. Like it's just kind of like somebody in your life just kind of picks it up by default because of your example, and it improves things. We just did a Masterfull call on separating your sexy food fantasy from what is reality. And drinking wine every night with dinner is a perfect example of a sexy food fantasy. It's just, this is just what we do, and it's just our routine, and it connects us and all of the things. When in reality, you're still watching TV. You're still like, how was your day? It was good. Same old, same old. You know, it's the same shit, different day kind of stuff. And when we take away the wine piece, it's like, you know what? I actually am still living that same life. And as someone who values her fitness, and I know you do, and someone who values getting up and going on hikes and being active outside of general fitness, you're just an explorer. I bet you feel better not ending the night with alcohol every night. You probably sleep better. There's so many different benefits to it. And so when we separate that sexy food fantasy to reality, it's like the reality is life without this habit that just controls me instead of me deciding this is what I really want today. My life without it is the sexier choice. I just wasn't thinking about it that way. And I can see you changing the way that you're thinking and the way that you're sort of just having these conversations with your boyfriend in your relationships and seeing, hey, actually, this isn't going to break anything with us. It can make us stronger and better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I love you being more discerning and getting clarity on what's actually special or what actually is connection or quality time. Does it have to involve wine? Maybe it could just be, I don't know, going for an occasional evening walk together after dinner. Or, I mean, there's obviously thousands of different ways humans connect. It doesn't just have to be wine, but we get into these routines, these habits, these rituals with our partners, and they go unchecked. And they can go unchecked for 20, 30 years until one of you wants to change. And then it's like, oh no, this might disrupt like the relationship. This is how we spend our time together on the couch, watching TV and eating popcorn or having wine or whatever. So there can often be a little bit of hesitation with our clients of like, uh-oh, I'm going to have that conversation with my partner. I'm not sure how that's going to go because it's going to affect them too. And honestly, the funny thing is, most of the time, in fact, I don't know if I can recall any time where a partner's just been like, sorry, not going to support you. You're on your own with that one. They're like on board, you know? So one of the hard conversations is oftentimes just coming to the table and eating at the table instead of in front of the TV dinner. And so I'm like, well, if you really want connection, it makes sense that you would be eating without the TV so you can actually talk to one another. That's the point, the goal. So anyway, I just appreciate you sharing that. One thing I did want to kind of circle back around to is it's come up quite a bit that you are a traveler. And I know that change is difficult no matter who you are, but it can certainly add a layer of complexity to the circumstance when you are changing your habits, being in a program like this while also constantly globetrotting. And I'm wondering how you were able to do such a good job. Maybe you can teach us a masterclass on this of being able to execute the habits while being in a different hotel week to week to week. Because again, the beautiful thing about habits is they follow you no matter where you are. Your body is your body. Your hunger signals are going to arrive. So did you just let your body take the lead instead of eating from your mind or a clock? I'm just wondering, like, what were the challenges or how were you able to kind of bring those things together in a way that's been seamless for you?
Yeah, probably the biggest challenge is when I am traveling, you're kind of at other people's schedules. So you're in a conference all day and lunch is at noon. Maybe I'm not hungry at noon, but it's only served from noon to 1. And so, and then breakfast, you have to eat it when before your meetings or whatever. So it's a lot harder to stick to the program and stick to your hunger cues when you've got these forced time schedules of when you need to eat or when food is available to you. So what I've done is probably the lunch is the hardest part for me because I'm typically not hungry when they're serving the lunches at the conferences or whatever. So what I do is I when the food is out there available, I'll go get some and then just take it back with me and not eat it yet and just wait until I am hungry, as long as it's something that can be served cold. You know, you don't want your your hot food to get cold. But so that was one of the tips I learned. Um, and then sometimes I wouldn't even eat lunch, the lunch that they served, because knowing that right down the hall there's a cafe or something where I can go grab something later when I actually am hungry. So just letting myself be free of those boundaries of like, everybody else is eating at the pasta bar, I should do it too. And just letting my body take the lead instead of my mind. And it's not easy because you're with all your friends, your colleagues, and they're all eating lunch and they're looking at you like, why aren't you eating? What's wrong with you? And I actually had an instance of that. I was at a work lunch and with all my colleagues, and I was just kind of picking up my food, and they're like, why aren't you eating? What's wrong? And I'm like, I'm really not hungry. And these women were quite a bit younger than me, and they were all struggling with their weight a little bit. So we had a great conversation, and I was kind of sharing with them some of the principles I've learned about, like, I'm just really listening to my body and when I'm hungry, and only eating when I am. And they were like, just awestruck, like, really? You could do that? Like, yes. And I'm actually having good successes. And this was several months ago, and I've kept up with them and chatted with them. And we're kind of have this own little accountability group of, how's it going? Are you eating when you're hungry, when you're not? Or, so it's been gratifying. I kind of have that mind of a teacher. I'm an educator, so I always love to learn new things and then share what I've learned with other people. So that was a great turning point too, of like, all right, I got this down enough that I can help others in their journey as well.
Yeah, I actually really love that. I think that's amazing. It's a great way to teach and to learn is obviously by sharing your experience and helping other people, because it's true. We're so used to eating from food rules and the clock and calorie counts and meal plans that we completely lose that, oh, we have this calorie counter inside of us that already does all of that work for us. So we don't have to eat from our brains. But it is hard when we have been socialized to, and people around you are eating at a specific time, right? And there's a small window of opportunity to not act on that. And I think that's what is unique about the Unstuffed and Masterfull program. Are these are the types of conversations that we help our clients navigate. It's like, what do you do in these social circumstances when I feel uncomfortable or I feel like I'm being rude, or it's how do I navigate that? And obviously the best case scenario is we work towards getting you hungry at the appropriate times. But if you're waking up on the East Coast and then traveling to the West Coast, your hunger hormones are not necessarily aligned with when everybody else is eating. So it gets complicated sometimes. And we have to learn how to pull that apart when you're in different time zones. So that's another unique challenge that people don't think about, these real life scenarios when they're joining a program or trying to lose weight. And these are real obstacles that people encounter regularly. So I love these nuanced conversations. I'm curious, and I'm only going to hold you for a few more minutes, but you obviously have made progress both psychologically and physically. When did you start maybe noticing some of the changes in your body? How long were you implementing the habits before they started to stick?
It was probably about 2 to 3 months in. And really what I noticed was that I wasn't overeating, and uh I stayed away from the scale because my previous Melanie would weigh herself 4 or 5 times a day and was just obsessed with what the scale said, and it would make or break my day. So I hid my scale away so it's hard to get out. And so I had no idea how much I weighed during this process and actually didn't care, which was huge. mind shift for me. Like, I don't care what I weigh, as it's how I feel in my body, how my clothes feel, all of that. So it was probably 2 to 3 months in that I started to notice, like, wow, these clothes are fitting better. I um, can tell that my muscle tone is showing up because some of the fat is going away. So it took a while for it to happen, which was a little bit scary because the diets I've done before were crash diets and you see results within the first few weeks. And so I just really had to trust the process, that it will happen. It's going to be slow, but that means that it's going to stay off. And I'm learning these lifestyle changes. And yeah, so now I still don't know exactly what I weigh because I don't use the scale, but clothes fit good. I feel good. I have a lot of energy. Life is good.
Yeah.
So,
And it doesn't even matter. Isn't the
right.
point to feel good at the end of the day? I mean, it's so funny because if I were to post a photo of myself on the internet and say, okay, I want everybody to guess how much I weigh, and I've seen people do this, it is all over the place. Like,
Right.
we don't walk around with our scale weight tattooed to our forehead. Our value doesn't need to be attached to this random ass number.
Mhm.
And it's only what we make it mean at the end of the day. And if you decided to make it mean, it doesn't mean much of anything. And I'm not going to allow it to control or determine my mood and
Mhm.
become emotionally detached from it, then now you really can just focus on being happy, healthy, and from the inside out, right? We don't need the scales permission to tell us if we get to like ourselves that day. You just get to decide. And I always say, look, you know, if you're eating like an asshole, you also know if you're skipping your workouts or the things that make you feel good. We don't need the scale to tell us that. We have an emotional compass that lets us know if we're living in alignment with our values or not. And it's learning to be more connected to that innate part of ourselves as opposed to always looking for these external validators. It's like, can I just take care of myself?
Mhm.
So I appreciate you sharing that. I just want to get a couple more questions out of you here, Melanie. Take advantage of getting you here, your wisdom, your insight, your experience. How would you say your relationship with food is different today than it was before the program? So let's consider holidays or I don't know, date nights with your boyfriend, social gatherings, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's drastically different. Before, especially holidays, love getting together with my family. My mom is the best baker and makes the best food. And so before I would just like fill my plate over and over and just get it all in. But for instance, this last Christmas, I just had a little bit of my favorite things and didn't overeat, wasn't feeling overstuffed and uncomfortable. So, the other thing that has been huge for me is not clearing my plates. I grew up in a household where you eat what's on your plate always. And so that was a huge mind shift change to leave some on my plate, and I still do it every single meal. There's at least one bite that I give to my dog. And so that's how I justify it in my mind, is like, this is for Jasper. And um and then like date night, when we go out to eat, you get served these huge portions. So what I've been able to do is either my boyfriend and I share a meal and super satisfied with that, or if we want to eat something different from each other, then I just eat until I'm satisfied and then take the rest home, and then I have a great lunch for tomorrow. So I
Yeah.
am definitely not part of the clean plate club anymore.
You turn in your membership card. We are
Yes.
happy to have it and toss it. Yeah, I mean, that's such a terrible habit that so many of us grew up with. It's like a different generation, Mom. You literally picked corn from your backyard. I don't have to do that. There's a pantry and refrigerator full of food 10 feet away at all times. So I'm good. I don't need to clean everything on my plate, but I do like leftovers. So I'm with you. One of the things that I love about dining out, because I am a meal sampler, I like to try a little bit of everything. is bringing home leftovers and having a handful of meals ideally afterward, because I don't love to cook either. So two birds at one stone there. And it doesn't make the experience any less miserable, I've learned, if I don't leave uncomfortably full. So
Right.
shocker, you can go and have a wonderful time without having to clean your plate. New concept for many people. All right. One last question. I just want to know, what do you wish you would have known at the beginning of this process that you know now? So if we could rewind the clock, Melanie, if you could go back to yourself on day one and give yourself a piece of advice, because the reality is we are going to be opening the doors to Unstuffed on Monday, April 22nd. Many of our listeners are going to be on the fence about potentially joining. And what was it that kind of pushed you over the edge? And what did you need to hear at the beginning of the program that you think is, that you needed to hear that you didn't quite know back then?
Well, there's a couple things. Probably the biggest thing for me was that this is a lifestyle that you can maintain forever. I don't have to restrict my foods. I can eat all the things I love. That was probably the biggest thing for me. But at the beginning, it was just like, okay, sure, yeah, maybe this will work. But then throughout the program, like, yeah, it's really true. Like, you really can eat whatever you want, and within moderation, of course. But so that was one of the biggest triggers for me to want to join the program. But the other advice I would give, that this is something I resisted from the beginning, was like, I don't need to track my things. I can do it in my head. I don't need to journal, and it's not a big deal. I can just think about things. But that actually held me back in the first few months. And meeting with Steph, and she's asking me how my habit tracking's going. I'm like, oh, I do it every once in a while. And, I wasn't journaling. So once I started really doing that daily and really digging in and writing down my emotions and what was going on with me and how was I feeling, and then tracking everything, that was a huge game changer. So that would be my advice to anybody new joining the program, is do it. Do the tracking. It doesn't take that long, and do the journaling. You don't have to follow necessarily the journal prompts that are given to you. Just write about what you're feeling. And now it's a habit for me. I journal every day, and it's not necessarily the prompts I'm provided. It's just what's going on in my life. How am I feeling? What's my relationship with my food today, or my life in general, just whatever. And it's actually a great exercise for so many parts of your life.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's often the thing that most people are resistant to at the beginning, because we are just trying to do this all from our head. Unfortunately, you can't really solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it. So it's helpful to see what's kind of hiding in the deep, dark crevices of the brain, and journaling helps pull that out. Sometimes we don't even know what's in there, or a thought or belief that's been passed down to us from our parents or a teacher or a peer. And once we start to see it, then we can do something about it. But there is a lot of value in it, for sure. And I love how, as you've become more advanced, you've learned how to do journaling for your life, where you're at, your circumstances, and what you need. I think that comes with experience, practice, and repetition. Most of our new clients don't know how to do that. We can barely get them to put a pen to paper for under 5 minutes a day. So that really tells me that you have done the work. And I know you all were able to connect on a one-on-one call pretty consistently, but I think there's a lot of value in even being able to email and say, hey, how is the tracking going this week, Steph? I know we do a pretty good job of staying on top of our clients with those weekly check-ins when needed, and just making sure that they have what they need to be successful, even if they can't attend the coaching calls. Steph, I'm going to go ahead and let you kind of add your final thoughts here, or anything else you want to ask Melanie before we put a bow on this thing today.
The question that I have for you, Melanie, is when we check in with you 6 months, a year, 5 years from now, who are you? When you think about your habits now and the things that you have learned, the things that you're doing, the way that you're noticing your mindset and the way that you're kind of coaching yourself through these experiences, doing the journaling and all of that, what do you have to look forward to in over the next year or more? What is future self Melanie excited about?
Yeah, I see myself being more confident. I definitely have struggled with confidence my entire life, but truly in the last year that has improved substantially. So I see my confidence continuing to grow with as far as how I feel about myself, how I can make decisions and not worry about what other people might be thinking, probably aren't, but what I think they might be thinking. And so I think that's been the biggest shift for me, and just continuing to put my habits into practice and never gaining weight again. Just being able to maintain and yeah,
Boom.
yeah, very
Finally.
excited about that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I just think it's so important because when we often wrap up these programs, the end of the 6 months of Unstuffed versus the end of the Masterfull journey, there's just like a maturity that happens in the Masterfull work, because in Unstuffed, you're so focused on the results and you're so focused on the habits, and there's so much learning and unlearning. And then we get, as you mentioned, so much deeper through Masterfull. And if people kind of cut it off on one of the earlier programs, we really see this pattern of escape, this pattern of now the eyes are off of me. Now we even sometimes see it in the slow fade, the middle of the program. If they're not doing everything perfectly, they start to kind of fade away, and we have to pull them back in and drag them back to kind of open their eyes up. And what I think is so valuable is this sort of future view of who am I now that I have these habits, because it only gets better from here. When the habits belong to us, when they are who we are instead of something we're doing, something we're learning, something we're trying to figure out, we can see that sort of compound effect, the future effect of continuing to be this person versus like, and now it's over and I treated it like a diet and I can just like run away and go back to all my old BS. And when people do that, they tend to come right back and say, okay, maybe I wasn't ready to leave just yet. We're like, welcome back. Let's get you there. Let's get you there. So I'm just really proud of you. I'm really encouraged by your success and your willingness to call yourself in on the areas you weren't doing the things and start doing them. And I think that's why it's worked so well for you. I'm really excited to see this future version of you, this more confident, secure, never regain your weight version of you. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, also just to move forward in your life without this ball and chain that we are dragging. We don't even know who we are without dieting. It's become so a part of our identity and who we are, what we do, and the decisions we make, that it's almost, not to sound cheesy or cliche, but like being born again. It's like, okay, who am I now that I'm not focused on food and weight loss all the time? Because that takes up such a large chunk of our mental bandwidth and our free time. It's a hobby. And in my case, a full-blown obsession for many, many years. And so when you lose that, now we have an opportunity to start exploring who we really are, what our genuine interests are, what hobbies we really like. And this is why I always invite clients to unfollow and get rid of those kind of podcasts that are focused on weight loss, the kind of Instagram accounts that are focused on this stuff, because it's like, go follow accounts that add value to your life now. We need to turn the page. There's a new chapter that you're writing, and it doesn't involve weight loss. If you continue to think like a dieter, then you will continue to act like a dieter. So now you're a non-dieter. That's what you've been working towards. If dieting didn't even exist on this planet, what accounts would you be following? What documentaries would you be watching? Those kind of questions. And I think it really starts to stretch the mind a little bit and open up possibilities, opportunities that otherwise we were just kind of blind to because that was the most important thing in our life. So I really love that question, Steph, and I appreciate you asking it because it's a banger. I think that's what we want for all of our clients. If we contact you next year, as we've done with previous clients, and ask them to come on the podcast, and it's like, we want your 1 year update, we want your 2 year update. Where are you going to be? And so far it's been pretty good. When we brought all of our previous clients back, they're like, I'm just rocking and rolling. I don't even think about this shit anymore. I'm like, okay, we've done our job. Yeah. That's what I need to know, that Unstuffed is a success. If I can contact a client from 5 years ago and they are like, Unstuffed what? Who? That's the dream. So I'm going to give you an opportunity, Melanie. Any last thoughts before we kind of wrap up today's episode?
Yeah, I just want to thank you both for being in my life and being on in my headphones every day. And it really has helped just to continually have that reinforcement, the accountability, and it's truly a great program. And I encourage anybody that struggles with weight loss to do this. It's definitely worth the investment. Yeah.
One and done, baby. That's it. Like,
Yep.
it was funny. Steph and I were talking about the other day. I don't know, Steph, was it on the podcast or YouTube? I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the content that we create and where it's going out. But the average American spending $128,000 on weight loss in a lifetime. Like, okay, sure, Unstuffed is an investment, but it's nowhere close to that, or even Ozempic for that matter. And not that I'm shitting on Ozempic, there's a time and a place, but I'm just highlighting how we see it as a big expense potentially. I mean, that's subjective depending on who you are. I've paid much more for coaching in my past, that's for sure. But I think more importantly is, again, that idea that this is the last time, for real, for real. We are the weight loss program that Noom pretends to be, as Steph says. Like, that is the truth. We really have been committed to figuring out the right path that is permanent. That has always been my objective from day one. And it's taken a lot of trial and error to get there. But I think we have the best recipe that we've ever had. And that is only evidenced by our clients' success. And like I said, being able to contact them few years later, and things are still in a good place. So Melanie, thank you to believing in the Unstuffed program, trusting Steph and I, and allowing us to guide and mentor you. That takes a lot of courage. And it's scary to make these kind of decisions. It's hard to really trust when you failed or you feel like nothing has worked in the past, to think, oh, okay, well, why is this going to be different? And you did. It was a risk. But I think in this circumstance, that risk certainly had a reward that paid off. So just always so grateful to you and all of our clients who take that chance, give us a chance. I mean, hell, we give you a 30-day money back guarantee. So you at least get to try the program on for a month and see how it fits before making that commitment. But yes, thank you to you and our listeners for joining us today. Again, just so you all put it on your calendars, we will be opening the doors to Unstuffed on Monday, April 22nd, and join the interest list so you can get access to those early action bonuses like monthly one-on-one coaching calls or habit tracking chart monitor by your coach. Those are game changer bonuses, in my opinion. So more on that if you join the interest list. And thanks to our listeners. We will catch you all next Tuesday. Bye, y'all.